Welcome to TYT Interviews. We are doing a series on national security and civil liberties. We've got a great guest for you guys in that regard today, Trevor Timm. He's the co-founder and executive director of Freedom of the Press Foundation. He's also a writer, activist, lawyer. He specializes in free speech and government transparency issues. He was the winner of the 2013 Hugh Hefner First Amendment Award for Journalism. That sounds sexy. I like it. This is long. Hold. He's work has appeared in The Atlantic, Al Jazeera, Foreign Policy, The Guardian, Harvard Law and Policy Review, Politico, PBS MediaShift, and Salon. He formerly worked as an activist at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I'm going to stop now. The list is too long. Trevor, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Obviously, the main thing we want to talk to you about is Freedom of the Press Foundation. First, what is it?
Well, Freedom of the Press Foundation started about a year and a half ago. Our basic mission is to support journalism organizations that are dedicated to transparency and accountability. And the original inspiration for it was the financial blockade of Wikileaks. Back in 2010, Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal cut off Wikileaks from funding, even though they were doing everything that journalism organizations all over the country do, which was publish government secrets in the public interest. And so we really wanted to right that wrong and start taking donations to them again. But we also wanted to start supporting other innovative journalism organizations that were up and coming. And so we decided to start taking donations to a variety of organizations that tackle government secrecy and national security issues in innovative ways. And over the past year, we've raised about $500,000 for WikiLeaks and these other organizations. About $200,000 of it went to WikiLeaks, but the other $300,000 went to other organizations. We raised money for the Chelsea Manning trial transcripts when the government wouldn't release their own. We sent in professional stenographers to bring transparency to that trial. And we've since been working on a variety of issues involving digital security, protecting sources' rights, and we even named Edward Snowden to our board of directors just last month.
So I want to ask about where the money goes and whether the U.S. government takes an interest in where it comes from, et cetera. First, I wanted the audience to get a sense of who were the founders, because it wound up being fairly relevant.
I should have mentioned our founding board members include Daniel Ellsberg, the famous Pentagon Papers whistleblower, John Cusack, the actor and activist, J.P. Barlow, who founded EFF, and Jenny Jardin, the editor of Boing Boing, but the two probably most relevant are Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, who helped us found the organization in late 2012, and then just a month later, or a month or two later, were contacted by the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, and over the next 6 months, 8 months, and a year, they reported out probably would have become the biggest investigative story in a generation.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good timing. You found a board with those guys, and then next thing you know, Snowden gives them the leaks. But of course, it's not a coincidence. The guys who care most about protecting the press are the ones that people turn to when they actually want to give a real scoop, as opposed to going to the mainstream press. So that makes a lot of sense. How is John Cusack involved? Is he on the board as well?
Yeah, John Cusack got involved because he was friends with a couple of the board members. He's been interested in these issues for a really long time, and he's incredibly passionate about them. Actually, yesterday, he just did a Reddit AMA where he was answering all sorts of questions about anything from freedom of the press to his movies. And, just his knowledge and his passion comes out in his answers. You can see he really cares about the subject. He is intimately involved in everything we do, and has been really helpful on a number of fronts.
Yeah, no, he's got a passion for it. There's no question about that. All right, so when you guys raise money, the U.S. government has not been shy about coming after people associated with WikiLeaks or Edward Snowden. Is that a legal issue for you guys? Have they contacted you at all? How does that work?
No, so, the big injustice back in 2010 when WikiLeaks was cut off from Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal was not that they were doing anything illegal, but what they were doing was perfectly legal and protected by the First Amendment. Basically, what the government did was, instead of going to court and trying to get them censored, they went to the unofficial route and decided to unofficially pressure these private companies to cut them off and basically slowly strangle them financially and then censor them that way. If they went to court to try to do this, the judge would have laughed them out of the courtroom because it's just, we know it's protected by the First Amendment. And so, by us taking donations to them and then passing them along, was not illegal at all. It was perfectly legal, and we wanted to make sure that this didn't happen to another organization again. And our statement was that we were going to, be there in case the government tried this again, because it was really just an end run around the First Amendment. As far as Edward Snowden goes, he has his own defense fund. He's on our board of directors now. Obviously it's an unpaid position, and we're not taking any funds to him. But what he is hopefully going to start doing is talking about digital security issues with journalists and sources, and explaining how they can better protect themselves from this mass surveillance. We've seen obviously in the past 6 or 8 years under the Obama administration a record number of prosecutions of whistleblowers, and who better to evangelize about the importance of encryption and privacy online than Edward Snowden.
Now, there's always that great irony that they're so mad at Edward Snowden for violating their privacy.
Oh, you mean the government? Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that's kind of what he reported on, so that you guys were doing that on a mass scale. So speaking of which, there was a new report out today because of Edward Snowden's revelations on Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras's website, where they explained that the government tried to consider different ways of arresting Julian Assange, even though he clearly did an act of journalism, which apparently is illegal these days, according to the U.S. government, and that Britain was tracking everybody who went to the WikiLeaks website. So they assumed, I guess they thought you might be guilty if you were trying to find out what your government was up to in a democracy, and those sound outrageous. I mean, certainly, Trevor, if you had told me 10, 15 years ago that the U.S. government would be doing that, I would not have believed you. I would have said, you're a kook, you're a radical, that's crazy talk. There's no way the U.S. government's going to do that. So how did we get here in this crazy extreme state where a Democratic so-called progressive president is the one authorizing all this?
I know it's really a shame, considering, especially coming into office in 2008, Barack Obama was talking about how he wanted to protect whistleblowers, how he wanted to be the most transparent administration in history, and yet he does a complete 180 and starts prosecuting more whistleblowers than anybody in history, and covering up all of these national security secrets, information that as a senator he would have been screaming from the rooftops that the public has the right to know. And this WikiLeaks story that just came out last night is just the cherry on top of what's been happening over the last 6 or 8 years. But it really is unbelievable that the U.S. intelligence agency and Britain's intelligence agency are using their resources to go after a media organization that has been publishing the same information that the New York Times and the Guardian and other mainstream newspapers have been publishing, but instead of just letting that be, realizing that that's free speech and protected under the First Amendment, at least in the United States, they've decided to use taxpayer money to turn their entire intelligence apparatus against them. And it just goes to prove what Edward Snowden's been talking about, that it's not all, the government keeps saying we're doing this type of mass surveillance to keep everybody safe from terrorism, when it's not about terrorism at all. It seems to be about control and surveilling people with opinions that they don't agree with. And to see that the British government is going as far as to surveil the innocent readers of WikiLeaks is just beyond the pale, considering how many thousands and millions of people must go to that website a year. It's just hard to fathom.
It almost seems like an act of intimidation. Hey, don't even read, even if it's somehow leaked into the press and onto the internet, don't even read it, because if you do, we'll come after you. We don't care if you're a citizen or not. And this is, of course, not what our democracy or British democracy was founded on. So I don't even know how people actually get information to the Glenn Greenwalds of the world anymore. So it's become so legally perilous with what the United States and what they're calling the Five Eyes, Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, are doing to try to catch people giving information about the government. How do these guys even get the information anymore? I literally don't know how they do it.
No, it's a great question, because we've seen in these whistleblower prosecutions in the last 6 or 8 years, they don't even need the journalist to testify against the source. They can just go to an email provider, they can go to a phone company and get a subpoena and get all of these records. And it's not until after the fact that the journalist and source even realize that their communications have been spied on. So actually, one of the flagship projects we're working on at Freedom of the Press Foundation is called Secure Drop. It's an open source whistleblower submission system, kind of like the system that WikiLeaks pioneered 5 or 6 years ago. It was actually created by the activist Aaron Swartz shortly before he died last year. And we took over the project last year and have been upgrading it. We hired a bunch of people to work on the code to make it more secure, easier to use. And we've actually been going out to journalism organizations in the past month or two and installing it. And actually Glenn Greenwald's organization, First Look, their website, The Intercept, actually uses it as well. And basically gives sources a more anonymous and more secure way to contact reporters online without having to worry about every movement being vacuumed up into the NSA's dragnet.
Doesn't it feel like we're part of the rebel forces now? Like that we have to figure out all these different ways of getting past the matrix? Otherwise, the empire will find us and punish us.
No, yeah, I mean, it's really amazing that there's this kind of tug of war battle going on between people who want to keep their privacy and anonymity online, and the governments all over the world that are trying to essentially destroy it. I mean, the surveillance industry is huge. There are, forget the governments, there are, it's a $5 billion industry just for the private corporations that are building this stuff. And, there's only, a handful of $1 million being floated around to a variety of open source encryption projects. And, the battlefield is tilted far in the favor of the government, unfortunately. But, I think with these Edward Snowden stories, people have really started to wake up and realize that this is something you have to fight for. And, we've seen all sorts of privacy related products sprout up in the last 6 months, hopefully some of them that work. And, that's what it's going to take for the tide to turn. It's not all a legal issue. It's not something that Congress is going to fix completely. Even if they do fix part of it, we're going to have to develop technologies that help us fight back against this type of mass surveillance. And so we hope Secure Drop is kind of our one of those tools that journalists can use.
And is that the place where the people's money go? If they contribute to you guys, then you could do the Secure Drop and et cetera. Like, what else do you use the money on to protect press freedom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Secure Drop is our main project right now. Most of the donations that we receive directly to us will go to that. But actually, a lot of what we do is crowdfunding for other organizations. So, we still take money to WikiLeaks. If you designate your money to WikiLeaks, we give 100% right to them. We also, on our front page, we're raising money for 4 encryption projects that aren't our own. Tor, the anonymous web browser, Tails is a encrypted operating system, Red Phone is an encrypted phone system, and Leap is an encrypted email system. All of these projects are open source and are underfunded, and what we're doing is trying to raise awareness for them, make people realize that they can use them, but also support them so that they can continue to get better. And so if you go to our front page at pressfreedomfoundation.org, you'll see that you can actually see where every penny of your money goes when you donate to us. And you can designate it to specific projects, so you can choose which one's most important to you and donate that way.
Yeah, again, it's unfortunately a little depressing that you have to have organizations like you to protect what should be the most fundamental American right. It's in the First Amendment, and yet they've run roughshod over it. So I guess my last question is, do you see hope at all on the horizon? Because I love what you guys are doing, and you're still finding a way to get the information to the American people and to the people of the world, and it's enormously important, right? And I love what Greenwald's doing, and Poitras, and Scahill, and Snowden, and Assange, et cetera. But is there any hope that the machine turns around and says, oh, right, oh, man, our bad, we forgot to read the First Amendment. Right, so now you guys are free to do what you're supposed to do as journalists.
We can't do anything but hope that it turns around. I mean, the good news is that they haven't repealed the First Amendment yet, and it's there in black and white. And, if they ever do try to prosecute reporters, then hopefully they'll be beaten back. Right now, one of the biggest issues that journalists face, that Laura and Glenn actually face personally now, is crossing the border. They haven't, unfortunately, been back to the U.S. since they've started reporting these stories, and that's a real travesty that they can't feel comfortable enough traveling back to the United States, where they supposedly have this freedom of the press. But I think it's important to stay vigilant. These rights don't stay on the books because everybody becomes complacent, and so we hope that we can find new ways to help the First Amendment in the 21st century, not only in the legal realm, as people have been defending newspapers for decades and centuries in the courtroom, but also find technological solutions to help sources and journalists communicate safer, so that they can never get to the point where the government can subpoena this information and throw them in jail. So there's a variety of things that we can do, and that we hope we can do in the coming months and years to come.
Well, I like that there's somebody out there fighting against Big Brother. Trevor Timm from the Freedom of the Press Foundation, thanks for joining us on the Young Turks. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.